Hello, welcome back to The Inner. Today I'm joined by Artemis Marah. Hi,
Hi,
Artemis. How
Nelson.
are you?
Good to see you, and thanks for inviting me.
Same. Glad to have you here. If you could introduce yourself to the audience, tell them a little bit about yourself.
All right, so I'm Artemis. I'm an artist, currently based in Greece, but will be relocating to London actually to enter the bigger international art scene. And yeah, excited to be here with you.
That's awesome. So, we'll get into your art journey a little bit later, but um I know you as a mystic. Could you kind of describe your journey into, I guess, stepping into spirituality? What was that like for you?
Mm. That would take us back a couple of years. It's because once when I was early 20, I was very depressed actually, and I was going through a very dark times in my life. And many people might not have noticed it, how dead I was inside, because I used to cover it through external success. I was the best at university. I did an excellent thesis. Like, I was extremely professional and good in what I was doing to cover as well what was going maybe inside on. But there was always this hope that it doesn't have to be this way. You don't need to be depressed and dead inside. And that's how what led me actually to this journey to explore what is out there that can heal me, right? That can heal my burnout, that can heal my depression. And I started by actually journeying as well, even to Sri Lanka, to talk to real monks, to discover, okay, what's the solution in Buddhism actually? How they actually heal people. And I tried meditation, I tried yoga, I did all kinds of things to try to free myself from that burden that was inside. And it didn't work out. And I also went into New Age, tried all different things, read so many books, followed so many gurus and teachers to also there find, okay, what does actually work? Because even back then, when I was doing academic research, I was very rational, even in my approach to, I would say, inner growth. What does work? And through this journey of researching all different methods, be it in New Age, be it in Buddhism, even work with mediums, like all kinds of crazy stuff, I never managed to heal myself. And that's when I also start turning to Christianity, and I start going to churches because I thought maybe that will help. And I told them openly, hey, I'm depressed, I'm having demons inside of me. And I had that awareness back then. I already had it. And how do I get rid of those? How do I become fulfilled and truly happy? And they tried to pray for me, they tried to lay their hands on me, but guess what?
Didn't
Nothing
work.
happened. And at that time, for someone who really seeks for healing, for really seeks for deliverance, and nothing is working for years, you can imagine the amount of frustration. And then, luckily, though, I came across who is nowadays my mentor, and he actually delivered me. From one day of the other, I got filled with peace, love, and joy. From one day of the other, I got healed by all that I had, all the burdens that I got carried along through the journey. And yeah, here I am today. And that's when the whole transformation actually started.
That's awesome. So, um, based on who I met just a few months back, you don't look like where you came from. You don't resonate as depressed. You don't carry the anxiety anymore. So whatever worked, worked. um,
100%.
what would be some advice you would give, or some pointers that you would recommend for people who might currently be in a space of anxiety or depression?
Mm. I think the importance is to really, even if it's a very small seed in your heart, but to not give up, that you really believe that there's a state where you can live in, where you only experience joy, where you only experience peace and love. Because again, my reality back then, years ago, it was so different. I only had anxiety, only depression, but there was this small hope that still pushed me to look for how actually get out of there. Because if you give up, if you start resenting that situation, and if you accept it, then there's also no door out.
That's great. So going back into your art, right? When did you get into art? What kind of, was that something you've been doing since you were a kid? Is that something you picked up later? How'd that really blossom?
Actually, that only came with my own personal transformation. So the moment actually that I entered the kingdom, that I met God, and the moment that I got transformed, that's when I actually started doing the heavenly art that I'm doing now. Because before, I was actually up to a very successful career in international relations. That's also what I studied, right? That's international law, international politics. But once I got transformed and actually discovered that I've got a natural gifting for arts, which might have always been there, but never, I would say, used, because nobody encouraged me to be an artist before. It was always very career driven, very purpose driven, but on a worldly successful way. Because I thought to change the world, you need to change laws and you need to change politics. But there's also other ways to do that.
Yeah. And I really want to hear your like an insider perspective. You're based in Greece. Were you always in Greece or did you move there?
No, I've been around very internationally. I've been in Greece just for a year. I've lived in many different countries already. I've been moving a lot internationally. And now, as I said, my next stop will be London, also for the art scene. And yeah, it's just really picking up and growing in all those different cultures, languages, and places to be prepared of what is to come, I guess.
Okay. So where are you actually from?
So I'm half Swiss and half Greek, but I never lived in Greece before. Yeah.
Got you. So talk a little bit about Greek culture, because of course in the West, the only thing I know about Greece is the mythology, right? Only thing I know about that culture is Percy Jackson. So from an insider, what's it really like over there?
Well, I think there's still a certain amount of, I would say, pride on the mythology and the great Greece that it was once. But of course, as many other nations, well, it has fallen to a certain extent, right? Or not upholding maybe the same values it might have had once as a light token to the world, promoting different values, or back in the days, a democracy. Nowadays, there's of course still that needs to be done here, and I hope I will be part of it on building this nation. And especially from the creative point of view, as I'm an artist, I see it's a very dried ground. Because if you look at Greece, how it has been going through economic crisis for years, of course people have been suffering and not having even means to sustain themselves economically. And this, of course, if you don't even have money or something to feed, your creativity is dead. Because creativity can bloom the more once you have like the first need secured, because creativity and art is a luxury.
Yeah.
So I hope that Greece will develop even more economically, and that's also when creative people and creative processes can be also more implemented again here.
I like that. That's similar to the response I've given when people have asked me about my take on AI. It's, I believe we should use the robots to do all the jobs that we want, that we don't want to do. So that way we can go out and do all the creative things we actually want to do.
I love that.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we want to we don't actually want to work in factories. We don't actually want to clock in for 8 hours a day. We do that and we're comfortable with it because it's a means to an end. But if I could get the robot to do that, let the robots have it.
I love it. 100%. Yeah. And then it's just sometimes for people to struggle to reconnect to their creative source. Because if you've been deplugged from it and just focusing on survival your whole life, and then someone tells you, yeah, just be creative now, do what you like, it's a real struggle. So that's their need of the transformation and the inner transformation that would need to come in, right? And having also the right mentor who can help you discover yourself again in the process.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned about, like, especially when talking about your art, how your art is based on heaven. When did you first start having interactions with the heavens, or at least hearing stories about people interacting with heaven directly?
Mm. So actually, that started at the very moment when my depression got broken. So in this very moment when I was with my mentor, then who asked me a very deep question. So he started explaining me things about heaven, about the world, and just really telling me truth that resonated with me so deeply. And he asked me then one day, hey, you can have all the knowledge in the world. You can read as much as you want about God, about different things of yourself, about spirituality. It's like reading a Wikipedia article, it feeds your mind. But would you actually want to know your dad, your father? You want to know the source. And at that moment, when I said, yes, I want to get to know him, that's when my first real experience actually started immediately. That I saw the whole room being filled with light and felt how the Holy Spirit entered me. And it was a real first heavenly experience, I would say. And that's actually just one of many. And then it's what I say, it's a lifestyle that starts to be. It's not just having one encounter and then it's done, but it's how do you integrate heaven into your life? Because it's a lifestyle. Now that we are born from above, that we are part of the royal family, it's just life. It's not something extremely extraordinary, is it? How do you see it?
Yeah, I like that because you've gone through my mentorship course, so like it's about living from that place because Earth doesn't look like heaven unless we do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes us getting comfortable and familiar with that place in order for us to terraform this place.
Mm-hmm.
So I absolutely agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm.
So talk a little bit on just developing that relationship with God. So well, I know the relationship somewhat began then, but how did you begin to cultivate it
Mm.
following that point? What did that look like for you on like a regular basis?
All right. So for me, the process it has been quite intense, I would say, because I only met God the first time 3 years ago. So actually, within that time frame, I underwent seasons. And first, of course, when you meet God, for me at least, it was like it's super exciting, and you get to see all the bloomy parts. You start interacting with heaven. You start seeing different things, and also just getting used to this new reality. Because it's like you've been in the matrix for all your life, and all of a sudden you realize it. It's crazy. It needs a lot of transformation of the mind and of yourself, right? But then also I entered, for example, a desert season. So it's even as you see it described, many people, if as part of their preparation, went into the desert. That's when you really face yourself and get even more transformed by the heat. So I wouldn't say it was always easy, but it was always worth it, definitely, to undergo this. I wouldn't even say transformation, but transfiguration. And as my mentor, like Daniel Caleb, he tells or defines transfiguration as it's a complete change of state of being and appearance. And that's literally what I was going through. Like people, they would pass me by in the street because they wouldn't recognize me anymore, even 1 year in. So it was not only my inner state of being transformed, but also my outer state as a reflection of it. So, and
Mhm.
then all that and all those facets, be it internally or externally, you get to meet and know God better. And I think in the end, and I'm still learning, that God is everywhere and can be found everywhere. And in the end, it's just a matter of awareness.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, when let's say you're developing your okay, how do I want to phrase this? So, the kingdom experience. How would you describe the kingdom experience?
Wow, tough question. I mean, once you're living it, I mean, it's just the most amazing thing that there is. And it's like, for example, in sales, for example, when you make an offer to a prospect, many times you like heaven, it sounds too good to be true, right? And that's what the good news is. It sounds too good to be true because it's really that state of being or that place where you can find your true and authentic self. You've discovered your purpose, what you are, what you can be, and also develop in the process. And it's just amazing. And if just more people would also find that light and that, yeah, in it. But again, for many, even that as I've been talking to them, it almost sounds sometimes like a scam. It sounds too good to be true. I don't know if you've experienced that as well. That
Hey, if it doesn't sound too good to be true, it's not the gospel.
True.
But yeah, so you mentioned act like pretty much getting launched in all at once for the most part. Did you ever struggle with going back into some of those states, or has it been somewhat of a consistent stream that you learned how to live in?
It depends. Of course, there's like it's a constant stream and flow of things how you transform, but the old you is still somewhere inside you, and it needs to transform. So that process is also again a matter of awareness. Sometimes if we might not be as aware conscious, we might even tap unconsciously again in the older self because it was all us and is still in us, but we can now choose also to live according to the heavenly reality and who we are meant to be. So yes, I think it's really a process to choose who we are meant to be and choose our heavenly identity. And I think with time, as it goes, you also feel more and more comfortable and deconnect to what was. But it's like God, for example, God can be evil as it was maybe back in the days, but he also can be the best or the best father, right? God is all, right? God is not only good, God is everything. And I think we have like the same capacity. So that's why sometimes we might even tap into something that which wasn't even good, because God has the same consciousness. He can do all in the end. And it's just a matter to choose to be good. That makes
I like
sense.
that. Like the dealing with both the positive and the negative, like it's all of it.
Mhm. It's all
um
in.
yeah, I like that you said that because oftentimes, and especially in more Christian circles, my later years I was around more charismatics and Pentecostals, so I heard certain lingo where they would only accept God a certain way, and they would
Mhm.
even use their theology to try to flip things around and mix it up in order to make God really be something that fits their boundary, not necessarily what fits history or what's just true. Like,
Mhm.
funny enough, I want to say it's in Isaiah where it says, I create evil and I do good. I, the
Exactly.
Lord, do all these things. And they're like, wow, what does that really mean? I'm like, I understand it, but still, we have this concept where only good things come from God and bad things come from the devil.
Yeah.
In reality, good and bad can come from anything.
Mm,
So,
100%.
a question that I often get, and I love to see how you would tackle this. Um, what would be your advice for someone who's struggling to see in the spirit?
Hmm. It really depends what they want to get out of it. Like, do they need or want really to see in the spirit? Because what I even realized myself, because I was loving to see in the spirit, right? So I was even, I would say, preferring to look into the spirit or, having a vision or something than actually to take care of the physical life. So what I think what is really important here is the awareness we are still here on earth and we still have to take care of us and the world around us. So it's really what does it add to you seeing in the spirit? If you're already connected to God, if you grow in love, which is the most important, do you really need to see in the spirit? Or do you also, for example, have other channels in which you live? Because okay, I think we can develop in all senses where limitless beings in that sense. But I think also we're, as I think you sometimes mentioned the analogy like a radio, we also have different frequencies or stations. So go with what is most comfortable to you to grow and to interact. Some might see visions, other might have a still small voice in the heart. So I would really take those into considerations as it said, like we're all different part of his body. We're not all the same. So if there's maybe another channel that you're more comfortable, you don't need to necessarily see in the spirit to survive. But of course, it's fancy to have, so to speak. And how to develop it? Good question. I think the one thing that is important is, of course, mentorship. I'm a big fan of mentorship. So learn from people who already have that thing that you want, and then you can start developing.
I like that. Just drawing on that principle of impartation, that if I honor what's on someone's life that they're already walking in, I can figure it out from there. I might get it by accident.
Exactly, yeah.
That's actually how it developed for me when it came to dream interpretation. I saw John Paul Jackson. I saw him do it once and picked it up instantly. Just because I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing.
That's cool.
So yeah, I can agree to that. So you've kind of gotten to see traveling all over the world, as you were saying, many different cultures, pretty much everything, right? Let's see. So when it comes to manifesting the kingdom on the earth, what do you really think that looks like as far as on a global scale? Because people like myself, I haven't been all over the world. So mentally, I only think of, Texas because we're the most important or whatever, right? The
Uh-huh.
US got to be the most important thing on the planet, right? Right
Yeah,
now.
America first. Got it.
But you've actually been around. So, in a way, uh, how would you describe or what would you expect the kingdom fully manifested on the earth to look like on that scale?
Mm. Wow, that's a big question. And I think that's really a matter of, or how I look at it, dividing as well society already in sectors. So of course you've got art and entertainment. That's, for example, where I'm in currently. But then you also have got the economic sector, where it's more the governmental levels. And you've got also sectors of families. So I feel like if you divide already, you can bring heaven also better to it. So, as an example, me as an artist, I would take care of the arts and entertainment sector. That's where I studied what is the current state of the art industry nowadays and how my art will change that industry and also can set a different heavenly standard to it, right? And I think this will be, if we look at it globally, this can also be applied then to other sectors, for example, to governments. Okay, how do worldly people, how do people nowadays govern the country, which results for dissatisfaction of the people, for example? And how, according to a heavenly standard, could you change governmental policies and laws to then actually bring heaven into the governments? So I really feel like it's about equipping people where they're gifted in, where their purpose is, and then send them into those areas of expertise where they're already an expert in. Because what we've seen many times in churches, for example, they might meet God and then they run out of the world, hide in the churches, and just pray and worship there, right? But I feel that's not, if you want to really impact the world and have a positive change, that will not benefit people because you're hiding from it, right? As it said, don't be part of the world, but go into it. So that's how I would, or how I'm actually bringing heavenly standards to the industries. And I feel what's very important is collaboration, right? Once you have people, and I'm also part, of course, of a bigger community that actually tackles that, how can we change the world for the better? because one individual can only do so much. But if you are part of a bigger vision, we can achieve a lot, I guess. Yeah.
I like that. So, continuing along that line, same vein, what are some things that you feel or that you believe are going to start to go extinct, whether it be socially, economically, really any field, as the suns begin to awaken on the planet? You know, we're in the middle of a 30-year period. Things are changing right now. What are
Mm.
some things you actually feel are going to begin to go extinct? As in 30 years from now, we might not even be talking about it.
Mm. Well, I part for some animals and plant species that will go extinct because I worked for the UN for endangered species. So I was seeing how many animals and plants get distinct. So on another scale than that, in parts of like more economically, maybe you can go first to give me some ideas on what you would have in mind.
Yeah, so I've been seeing a decline. Like I've been tracking some of that myself. Our lifespans are getting longer. Now,
Mm,
mind you, I personally interacted with that in the heavens to make that a standard. Like I've been saying for maybe about 2 years now that the lifespan for a normal human is now 200 years. Part of what I see going extinct altogether is death. Death is
okay,
dying right now.
mm, got it. Yeah, I think it comes back then to the consciousness of people, right? Because many people are dying, many people are suffering, and yeah, not having a life or extended life that they could. So it comes back to your faith. What do you believe in, and what is your consciousness about it? So yeah.
Yeah. And I believe, in a way, the only real democracy that exists is the human population itself. As in, whatever the majority of us believe in manifests more often.
Mm,
Like,
wonderful.
for example, uh, the United States, we're known for being a democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a
No.
republic. We actually we actually don't vote for our leaders in that way.
Yeah.
Other leaders vote for our leaders. It's not the same.
Mm,
Uh, so it often gives the illusion that our choice doesn't matter or our decision, our vote doesn't count. Well,
mm,
when you really begin to look at things on a quantum level, like you mentioned earlier, me teaching about us being a radio, all of us giving off these signals, we're telling the world what to be. Whatever the world is getting the most of is what it'll begin to replicate and demonstrate around us.
mm,
So part of that is, I believe, is as we begin to stir up and more suns begin to awaken, we begin to shift that consciousness overall. And even the people who are asleep, people who aren't stepping into their identity, they'll begin to benefit just from the collective being shifted. Like I
mm,
see a day where people that hate God will live until they're 200.
mm.
Just because enough of us have stopped putting up with death.
Makes sense. It's like what my mentor always used to teach me because I love nature. But if I would start like recreating, let's say, the Garden of Eden right now here in Greece, people would still destroy it and destroy it again because their consciousness is not aligned yet to that heavenly reality. So if enough people, get transformed and step into their heavenly selves, then as well the consciousness expands, and we can also maintain bigger territories of heaven, so to speak, on earth.
Yeah. And I believe part of that, like I've heard, as you can see, I've been in a bunch of conversations with people over the past like 2 years. Something that has come up a lot is people feeling the pull to purchase land. And part of it is for that reason, to be able to create these heaven on earths that people can come and visit.
Mm,
These national parks, even myself, have been somewhat working on developing parks so that people had a sacred space in the community that wouldn't leave and they weren't expected to spend money there,
mm,
because
100%.
free stuff is rare in the US where everything costs money.
I'm from Switzerland, so who do you tell that? Mm,
I heard that Now, tell me if this is true. I heard that the healthcare is much better over in your area of the world. Is that true? Is there any credibility to that?
If I would be using a healthcare or be plugged into that healthcare system, I could answer you better maybe. But yeah, I feel I've been as healthy as never before, so I'm not too much knowledgeable in that area. I haven't been sick in all those years. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
fair.
haven't done too much research in considering what it would be like if I'm sick, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair. Because I haven't been sick in almost a decade myself. So
it's good, right?
yeah, because that again goes back to that consciousness. I stopped
Mm.
being sick when I stopped. Well, I chose not to be sick ever again. That was it. I wasn't even anointed yet. I just made a decision. I wasn't a mystic yet. I don't even think I was hearing God's voice yet when I decided I wasn't getting sick anymore.
Oh wow, that's
So,
amazing.
in the same way that we can choose to not put up with sickness, there's a lot of things that I see us eventually putting up with less until the collective doesn't put up with it anymore. Because
Mm.
we're the ones in control. We just don't know it.
Mm. Nice.
So, talking about sonship, right? How would you contrast sonship to the regular religious experience that most people are accustomed to?
Mm. I think it's based on relationship, what I would say. But again, I was never part of any church or Christian denomination. Like, I've never been in that world. I got straight into the encountering God from being into Buddhism and New Age, right? So I skipped that whole step, kind of, that many people were a little bit more into, maybe. Um, but I think what I've observed for the couple of times I've been to churches or when I was attending is there it's like a WhatsApp call. Like, normally when you call someone on WhatsApp, there's somebody there answering you. But what I saw in religion, they're like texting God, they're calling on WhatsApp, but he's just ghosting them. It's just a one-way communication channel. And they're kind of almost satisfied with it. They don't question it really. Hey, why is nobody answering my WhatsApp here? Like, really, like, being it via voice, be it by a clear answer, not just like, oh, I had a feeling, no, no. So I feel that's the difference, that when you're a son and when you call your dad usually answers because he cares about you. Like, oh yeah, my daughter is calling. Let's see what she's got today, right? So that's how I would see the difference of really having a relationship that is actually somebody not only there to interact with you, but then also you can become him. So in the end, of course, you might see it's yourself still separate from that source and from your father, but then it goes into a process of merging, right? That you become your like the own God being, and that you actually merge with who you follow and get to that oneness state with God, right? Which is far off, of course, I think, from many religious perspective in churches, where it's like God is here and you're down there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about that, because I like that's a concept that people are still coming to terms with, is us being the same thing that God is, or that it's even possible to be one with God. If you could talk a little bit more about that.
Mhm. For me, I think that's like the water drop who was deconnected from the ocean, then dropping again into the ocean. Think that's like the general picture of what is happening, I think, to many sons and daughter, right? Reconnecting and becoming one with that source. And it might also be scary, I think, for many people to really become and reconnect to the source, because you kind of lose yourself in a certain sense. Because if you drop into the ocean, you become one with the ocean. And especially, I feel like the human race is so individualistic and also on a, say, on an ego trip, right? It's only about you, and it's the separation of us, and not embracing that collective consciousness and that oneness. Even be it with nature, with animals, we see ourselves so separate from them. Oh yeah, that's the dog, that's the cat. But how much can we relate to them? How much have we come from the same source in the beginning? And I think that's a process which, of course, I'm also still in, to grow into that awareness of, being part of that huge and beautiful ocean, right? Or
Yeah.
how do you see it?
And I believe that goes back into something you mentioned earlier, which is about us growing in love, because that's all it really boils down to is we struggle to love things that we can't empathize with or sympathize with. We see it as too different from ourselves. That's why
Mm,
there's very specific wording in some verses where it's like, love your neighbor as yourself. Even that gets limited to where we only think about your neighbor as the person who lives next door to you, right? No.
mm,
it When you really dig into the picture he was painting, it's learning how to love anything that's around you as if it's you. That's the plants, that's the animals, that's other people. That's people who aren't that close to you. That's people that irritate you. Learning how to give them the same love and affection and like safe space that you yourself might need.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Where as we begin to grow in that, we start to heal. It starts to undo that ego tripping that you were mentioning.
Mhm.
Because it's hard for me to pull rank against myself. Mind you, I don't take myself that serious. And I'm like, my wife knows I'm a jokester every other time. It's just that I know my sense of humor isn't for everyone. So I don't joke too much in public, but I don't take myself that serious.
Mm,
Which vice versa means I struggle to take anyone serious, to be honest. But
mm,
it's all love. So, similar vein to a question I asked you earlier about seeing in the spirit, what would be some of your advice for people who are struggling to hear in the spirit? What would you recommend for people who are like, "Oh, I can't hear God's voice."
huh. Well, I think then I would need to coach myself on that as well a bit. I'm more the visual person because I'm an artist, right? So I'm actually more visually driven also in my interactions many times. So I think it's the same. It's really because I at that point I wouldn't know how to like what would be the exact coaching methods for somebody who would like to hear God's voice because it's also very situation based. I feel I had a moment when I heard God speaking to me clear as the day, and then 2 years not because I've got other channels I'm communicating with God with. So in the end, God can also communicate as He wants with you, and it's just also a matter to discover where you're most comfortable in. And I think I'm also still growing, exploring different ways, and especially realize that, or what I came to realize is hearing God is like if God is external to you, right? Which many people are after. So many people are after God's voice. They want to hear Him. But if you are God, if you're part of this ocean, is as you think, as you speak, it's God speaking. So that's then again the awareness of oneness that comes in. It's not that fancy, crazy external voice as a father speaking to you, but it's as you speak that God is speaking. So it always depends, I think, on the consciousness and on the awareness of people on how to hear God.
Yeah. Because I'd even say that's a step up where you leave from having the dialogue to functioning in that oneness you were talking about, where it's learning how to live from the flow,
Mm,
where anything that comes from this place of unity with God carries the same weight, carries the same authority, dominion, so on and so forth as any other aspect of God.
mm,
That you speaking to something from that place is the same as the Father speaking to it.
mm.
So that's amazing. What are some of the things that you believe kind of get in the way of other people stepping into that space?
Mm. I think it comes down a lot to faith. Um, they don't believe in that. It sounds too again, too good to be true. If you live the life, and I can give an example here in Greece, the Orthodox Church, for example, it's the main religion. So I went and I talked to Orthodox priests, and I asked them, "Hey, how is your relationship with God?" Just out of curiosity, I was just doing my field research, and none of them ever heard, saw, interacted with God, like 0 out of 0. And then when somebody would come across, like, hey, you could actually step into that, you can get to know your father personally. You don't need to be, again, texting him on WhatsApp and nobody replies. It sounds too good to be true. If you've lived 40 years, 50 years in a certain state and mindset, and you will feel it was wrong, or it's tough to admit that it wasn't the whole truth you've been living. So I think it also boils down a little bit to pride, like saying, "Oh, I think that wasn't the whole truth I had there. There must be more." So you need like to be a little bit humble to kind of see there must be more, and to admit that what you had wasn't it, even though you had many good ranks, maybe in church or whatever, and really believe that it is possible. And yeah, seek after it. Like, again, I was seeking without knowing it for God in Buddhism. I was seeking in New Age. Like, I think many people, they look all around, and that's why we do all those crazy things. And yeah, it's just sometimes we don't know where to look for and what it is in the end.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, similar vein again, accessing heaven, right? Uh, would you put that in the same category of it's one of those things that you have to realize you can do, otherwise you'll never tap into it?
I think so, unless yeah, you've got like a supernatural encounter and you get it just happens to you. But otherwise, you need to believe it, that it's possible in the first place. Like, um, otherwise, it's difficult to get something if you don't believe in it, isn't it?
Yeah, because I agree with you on something you just mentioned, where another resistance is the idea that what will my audience think if I change up my message that drastically?
Mm,
Or it's the idea that, or it's like the guilt or the shame of, I've taught this for 10 years, 20 years. I'm from the Bible Belt, so there's
okay.
people who've preached for 60, 70 years. There's a pastor in my area who passed away. He was like 99. I want
Wow.
to say he held the record for pastoring the longest.
Wow.
He preached that same message from that same consciousness pretty much his whole life. So I could imagine the idea of not tolerating a new thought when you've been that when that message has been that ingrained, where for some people the idea of something that foundational even being re-examined is too much of a risk, because
Mhm.
it somewhat undermines all of the work that they feel that they've done. It's
Mhm.
another area that I've had some leaders come and tell me, where they say, "Hey, we really love what you teach. Keep doing what you're doing." I'm like, "How come you won't teach it?" They're like, "I can't." And I'm like, "I wonder why you can't, because I think it's easy. You know I'm right." You actually agree with me. And it comes down to that. In some cases, there's money involved. I won't call everyone money hungry. It's not always that simple. uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, like sometimes there's too much internally at risk for them to
Mhm.
even offer the idea of a conversation that might lead to them deconstructing or reconstructing their faith or their
Yeah.
belief system.
Yeah, if you've already gathered that whole audience around you, having positioned yourself as an expert in a certain field, be it again for the new age people as a guru, be it in churches, it's tough to admit that there might be more, that you have a change in doctrine or a change in perspective sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say, I guess, my encouragement to the people who are specifically in Christianity. I apologize to the rest of the religions. I haven't studied your text enough to be able to quote them as fluently. I grew 19 years in Christianity. Like I had time to actually study the Bible.
Mm.
But when Paul is a great example of someone having to change his entire message because he found out he was wrong later. So it's fine. It's okay. He once persecuted the people he later joined. It's fine. You're okay.
Oh yeah. Mm.
So let's see. I kind of want to just open up the floor for you to begin to share. Just any words of wisdom you might have for the audience, anything that you'd like to leave with them.
Mm. All right. I think just for anybody who is on that journey, even though, of course, in this world it might be rough sometimes, in your inner world it can be rougher even, but there's always, yeah, this hope for transformation and this real transformation that can happen if you feed yourself with the right sources and surround yourself with the right people that can actually uplift you in this process. So, and again, I'm coming from the deepest of pits of all, and I was on the edge of really, really dark days. So if I'm really saying, even from darkness you can turn to light, that's, if it was for me possible, then I think it can be for anyone, and every and any situation can always be turned around if you believe it's possible and not just sit there. So yeah, I think that's really the encouragement, to keep going, keep seeking, keep growing, and become who you were always meant to be.
What are some spiritual practices, if any, that you use regularly that help you stay in your identity?
Hmm.
Like, are you a
Practice.
person that prays a lot? Do you fast a lot? Is it just meditation? Is it just uh, recognizing your own energy and trying to stay in that flow? What does that actually look like for you?
I would say none of that. I'm not too much somebody of, practices or, exercises, even though, okay, I might have done them sometimes. But I think it always depends on the seasons and when you're at. And just being aware, because it is like God can speak anytime, anyhow. Like, you don't need to pray or fast for it, right? And yeah, so it's just a matter of being conscious what's going on in your life, being wise as well, growing in wisdom always to make strategic decisions, which are according to your purpose, and then just go with the flow of the river. Yeah.
So, where are some of the places that people can connect with you? I know you're an artist. Where can people purchase your art or find your artwork?
So they find me on Instagram and Facebook under my name, Artemis Marah, as well as me being part of the Transfigured universe. And yeah, those are the places where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Artemis, it's been great having you on. This has been great. And, well, that concludes this episode of The Inner. Y'all, until
Thank
next time,
you.
y'all be blessed.